There are moments when a single image, carved upon the walls of a temple or inscribed upon the fragile surface of papyrus, seems to carry within it the weight of an entire civilization's vision of reality. Ancient Egypt, with its pantheon of gods, its towering pyramids aligned to the stars, and its vast corpus of sacred knowledge, was a culture obsessed with symbols, keys that open not only doors of religious ritual but also inner gates of consciousness. To the Egyptian mind, a symbol was never merely decorative. It was alive, a vessel through which divine energies could flow, a kind of code inscribed into the architecture of the cosmos. Some of these symbols have endured in our collective imagination: the ink, the eye of Horus, the scarab, the feather of Maat. Each of them whispers of mysteries not yet fully unraveled, as though time itself conspired to preserve fragments of a language once spoken fluently by the soul. Among these symbols lies one of particular resonance, a glyph that scholars have examined and mystics have contemplated, yet whose depth often escapes the surface gaze. This symbol, subtle yet immense, seems to carry within its design a hidden blueprint for transformation, not merely of thought or spirit, but of the very fabric of the body itself. It suggests that the ancients may have grasped a truth that science only now begins to articulate, that DNA, the spiral of life within our cells, is not a static script but a dynamic song, capable of being retuned, rewritten, awakened into new harmonies. What if the Egyptians, with their profound sensitivity to the interplay between heaven and earth, discovered a way of encoding in symbolic form the very process of biological transfiguration? What if this symbol is less an ornament of the past and more a living invitation to reprogram the essence of who we are? The modern world often views DNA as an immutable code, a string of biological instructions passed down from ancestors, determining the boundaries of our potential. Yet in truth, DNA is more like an instrument, sensitive, responsive, resonant with the frequencies of thought, emotion, environment, and even intention. We live in an age where science speaks of epigenetics, of how lifestyle, trauma, meditation, and even sound can influence the expression of our genes. But what the ancients intuited, without laboratories or genetic sequencing, was that the body itself is a temple, and its sacred fire can be reshaped through the language of symbols, rituals, and states of consciousness. The Egyptian symbol in question may well have been their way of compressing into visual form a vast, experiential technology, a spiritual algorithm for awakening dormant strands of possibility within human nature. Symbols work because they bypass the surface mind. They do not ask for logical consent, they slip past the guarded gates of reason and strike directly at the deep reservoirs of the psyche. The Egyptians mastered this art, crafting hieroglyphs that were not only words but also spells, not only images but also mirrors of cosmic forces. To look upon such a symbol was to participate in its power, to allow one's inner architecture to resonate with its form. This is the essence of reprogramming, not through mechanical intervention, but through resonance, alignment, and participation in archetypal truth. If we imagine DNA as a double helix rising like a ladder of light, then the Egyptian symbol functions as both map and key. It gestures toward the hidden staircase within, the means by which matter is transfigured by consciousness. It suggests that what we inherit is not a prison of predetermined sequences but a potential waiting to be awakened. And perhaps this is why such knowledge was both revered and concealed. To alter one's very blueprint is to hold power far beyond the reach of mere political authority. Kings and pharaohs may have ruled the land, but those who held the secrets of the symbols ruled the currents of the invisible. This introduction is not meant to provide immediate answers but to open a doorway of possibility. We are entering a landscape where ancient art converges with modern science, where mythos intersects with biology, and where the boundaries between matter and spirit blur into a single continuum. To contemplate that an Egyptian symbol could hold the key to reprogramming DNA is to admit that the universe itself may be constructed like a vast text, a living hieroglyph, in which every form conceals instruction, every vibration carries meaning, and every pattern offers the chance to awaken. As we walk further into this exploration, we will begin to unravel the core themes and concepts hidden within this symbol. We will ask, what truths did the Egyptians encode within its form? How might it relate to universal archetypes of creation, death, and rebirth? And how can this ancient wisdom illuminate our own potential to reshape our bodies, minds, and destinies? But before we descend into the deeper chambers of interpretation, it is enough to stand at the threshold, aware that what we are about to engage with is not merely history, but possibility. For if this symbol is what it appears to be, a doorway to the reprogramming of the human essence, then to contemplate it is to risk transformation. And transformation, once begun, is not easily undone. At the heart of ancient Egyptian thought lies a conviction that life is not fragmented but woven together by threads of correspondence between the seen and unseen. The desert sands, the flow of the Nile, the cycles of the sun and stars, all were read as reflections of a greater cosmic order. Symbols emerged from this vision not as inventions of the mind but as revelations of eternal patterns, like reflections in still water of forces too vast to hold directly in the hand. To the Egyptians, symbols did not merely describe reality, they participated in reality, shaping it as much as they revealed it. When we turn to the symbol said to hold the key to reprogramming DNA, we must place it within this worldview. It was never intended as an abstract emblem but as a living instrument, a resonance point where the human being could align with cosmic intelligence. The Egyptians perceived existence as layered, material, energetic, spiritual, and they understood that change in one layer reverberates through the others. Thus, a symbol etched on temple walls or inscribed upon amulets was not inert decoration, it was an access point, a seed of transformation planted in the fertile soil of the soul. The first theme to emerge here is that of resonance. Just as a tuning fork vibrates in harmony with another when struck, so too can the human body and psyche be brought into harmony with higher frequencies through symbols. DNA itself, in this view, is not a lifeless code but a resonant instrument, like the strings of a lyre waiting to be plucked by the right song. The Egyptian symbol functions as such a song, a visual frequency designed to awaken latent harmonics within our biological and energetic systems. Another core theme is interconnectedness. Modern science acknowledges that DNA is not isolated in its activity, it responds to signals from the environment, from emotional states, from the very field of consciousness. The Egyptians anticipated this long ago. They taught that the body was a microcosm of the cosmos, that what was inscribed in the stars was mirrored in our blood. The symbol becomes a kind of bridge between these two realms, encoding within its shape the union of the cosmic and the cellular. It is as though they realized that the human being is not merely a product of the earth but a node in a galactic network of energy, and that by activating certain inner codes, one could realign with the deeper pulse of creation itself. A third theme is transformation through initiation. In Egyptian temples, initiation was the great art, a process by which the ordinary human, bound by fear and habit, could be reborn as one who consciously embodied divine truth. Symbols were at the heart of these initiations, guiding the initiate through stages of death and rebirth, ignorance and illumination. To reprogram DNA is, in essence, to undergo initiation at the cellular level. It is to allow the old patterns, ancestral wounds, conditioned fears, inherited limitations, to dissolve, so that new expressions of vitality and awareness may emerge. The symbol, then, is not a passive object but an initiatory gateway, calling us to shed old skins and awaken hidden capacities. The Egyptians also perceived symbols as fractals of cosmic law. Every curve, every intersection, every balance of shape within a glyph was intentional, reflecting mathematical and harmonic principles. This theme connects directly with DNA, which itself is structured like a sacred geometry, a spiraling double helix following universal ratios. To gaze upon the Egyptian symbol is to engage with a geometry that speaks the same language as our very selves. It is as if the ancients carved into stone the visual equivalent of a tuning frequency, a reminder that our inner architecture is not random but deeply mathematical, deeply divine. Finally, there is the theme of suppression and remembrance. If such symbols truly held the power to awaken and reprogram human potential, then it is unsurprising that knowledge of their use would have been guarded, even suppressed across ages. Power structures throughout history have always sought to control access to transformation, for a liberated humanity cannot be bound by systems of domination. The Egyptian symbol's significance, then, lies not only in its intrinsic meaning but also in the fact that its deeper use has been forgotten or obscured. To contemplate it now is to participate in an act of remembrance, a restoration of an ancient covenant between humanity and the cosmos. Taken together, these core themes, resonance, interconnectedness, initiation, sacred geometry, and remembrance, form a foundation upon which we may understand how an Egyptian symbol could indeed hold the key to reprogramming DNA. It is not about altering strands of molecules in a laboratory sense, but about awakening dormant patterns of consciousness that express themselves all the way down to the genetic level. The ancients were not ignorant of such processes, they merely spoke of them in a language of myth, ritual, and symbol rather than the jargon of science. To step into this language is to recover a way of seeing where biology and spirituality are one continuum, where the symbol is both science and sacrament. It prepares us to explore not only abstract ideas but also the deeper symbolic narratives that carry these truths in story and myth. For the Egyptians, narrative was another kind of symbol, a living allegory in which gods and goddesses embodied the processes of transformation. In the next stage of our journey, we will enter this realm of allegory, seeking to understand how the mythic stories themselves encode the key to reprogramming our DNA. Symbols alone do not survive in isolation, they are woven into stories, and it is through these stories that their deeper power is revealed. The Egyptians, masters of myth and allegory, understood that truth was best conveyed not in linear explanation but in living drama, in cosmic tales where gods and goddesses embodied the processes of life, death, and renewal. To understand how a symbol could hold the key to reprogramming DNA, we must step into these mythic landscapes, where each character, each event, is less a literal history and more a mirror reflecting the inner architecture of the soul. Consider the story of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, the archetypal cycle of death and resurrection that reverberates across Egyptian cosmology. Osiris, the just king, is betrayed and dismembered by his jealous brother Set, scattered into fragments across the land. Isis, the devoted consort, gathers the pieces, reassembles him, and through an act of divine love conceives Horus, the avenger and renewer. On the surface, this is a tale of family and succession, of good over evil. Yet beneath, it is a profound allegory for transformation. Osiris is the genetic code, fragmented and dormant, lying in pieces within us. Isis is the force of intention, the divine feminine energy of remembrance and integration. Horus is the awakened potential, the new pattern of being born from the reassembled fragments. Here, reprogramming DNA is not a cold act of manipulation but an alchemy of love and intention. The scattered pieces of Osiris are the dormant aspects of our double helix, the silenced strands waiting for reactivation. Isis teaches us that it is devotion, will, and conscious alignment that gathers these pieces together. And Horus is the new human that emerges when the code is restored, an upgraded being, radiant with clarity, carrying the seed of cosmic order. Another myth, that of Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, speaks to the role of sacred knowledge in shaping reality. Thoth was said to have given humanity writing, language, and the secrets of magic. But these gifts were more than intellectual tools, they were technologies of resonance. To write was to cast a spell, to inscribe not only on papyrus but upon the living field of creation. Thoth represents the recognition that symbols themselves are active forces, shaping the very blueprint of life. In this sense, the Egyptian symbol for reprogramming DNA is a direct heir to Thoth's domain, a glyph that is not merely descriptive but performative. It does something to those who engage it, rewriting the inner script. The myth of the Eye of Horus offers yet another perspective. This eye, torn from Horus in battle and later restored, became a symbol of wholeness, healing, and divine vision. Its mathematical divisions represented the parts of the whole, fractions that together created unity. In this image, we see an allegory of DNA itself, strands divided, sequences broken or damaged, yet capable of restoration into coherence. The eye is not simply a protective emblem, it is a symbol of biological and spiritual repair, a reminder that what has been fragmented can be reassembled, and in that reassembly lies new power. Even the myth of Ra, the sun god who journeys across the sky and through the underworld each night, carries resonance here. Ra is the solar fire, the source of energy that animates all life, just as the sun's radiation catalyzes processes within DNA. His nightly voyage through darkness reflects the hidden cycles within us, periods of dormancy, struggle, or descent into the unconscious, followed by rebirth into light. This cycle mirrors the dynamic of genetic transformation, descent into shadow to face the old codes, followed by emergence into a renewed expression. What unites these narratives is the theme of fragmentation and restoration, death and rebirth, concealment and revelation. The Egyptians encoded in their myths the same process we now describe in the language of epigenetics and quantum biology, the recognition that the patterns of life can be broken, but they can also be healed, reconfigured, and reborn into greater harmony. Their gods are not remote beings but archetypal functions within us, forces guiding the transformation of our very selves. The symbol that holds the key to reprogramming DNA, when placed within these myths, becomes more than a static image. It becomes a doorway into a story, an invitation to participate in the cycle of Osiris's reassembly, Isis's devotion, Thoth's wisdom, Horus's restoration, and Ra's eternal rebirth. To meditate on such a symbol is to step into the myth itself, to enact the drama within one's own being, to allow the dormant patterns of the body to respond to the archetypal song. It is not enough to understand these stories intellectually. The Egyptians did not preserve them in stone merely as entertainment or moral lesson. They were rituals in narrative form, designed to be lived, invoked, internalized. To hear the story was to be placed within it, to become Osiris, Isis, Horus, Ra. In this way, the myth functioned as a kind of genetic initiation, guiding the initiate into the reprogramming of the self at every level. When we read these myths through modern eyes, we may be tempted to see them as quaint or metaphorical. But what if they were literal in a different sense, not literal history, but literal technology? What if the Egyptians discovered that the way to alter the deepest codes of the body was through story, symbol, and ritual, weaving together image and emotion until the very DNA sang a new song? This is the deeper symbolic narrative, that the myths are not about gods in the sky, but about gods within the blood, the bones, the double helix itself. They are stories of our inner architecture, dramatized so that we might remember what lies hidden beneath layers of forgetfulness. The grandeur of Egyptian myth and symbol may appear distant, a relic of an age long buried beneath sand and time. Yet the true test of any knowledge, especially one as profound as a symbol capable of reprogramming DNA, is whether it can be lived, whether it can ripple into the fabric of everyday life. If we leave this wisdom suspended in abstraction, it remains no more than beautiful poetry carved on the walls of forgotten temples. But if we draw it down into practice, if we allow it to shape the rhythms of how we think, breathe, and move, then the ancient symbol ceases to be an artifact and becomes a living force. The Egyptians themselves were not passive dreamers of myths, they lived their cosmology daily. Their temples were not places of idol worship but laboratories of consciousness, where geometry, light, sound, and ritual combine to bring the participant into resonance with the divine. Likewise, to work with a symbol that carries the key to reprogramming DNA means to treat life itself as a temple. Every thought, every word, every act becomes part of the architecture of transformation, influencing not only the psyche but the very biology that sustains it. Modern science has given us a framework for understanding how such integration might work. The field of epigenetics reveals that our genes are not static sentences but fluid expressions, switched on and off by the environment of the cell. This environment is shaped not only by diet and lifestyle but also by states of mind, by emotional climate, even by the subtle fields generated through meditation or intention. The Egyptian symbol, contemplated and invoked, becomes one such environmental factor, a vibration that shifts the context in which DNA expresses itself. It is less about changing the code in the mechanical sense and more about creating the right atmosphere for new patterns to emerge. In practical terms, this could mean working with the symbol as a focus of meditation, allowing its geometry to reshape the patterns of thought and emotion. Just as staring at a mandala can bring the mind into alignment with cosmic order, so too can gazing upon or visualizing the Egyptian symbol begin to create coherence within the nervous system, which in turn signals the body to enter states of repair, regeneration, and expanded possibility. In this way, the symbol operates like a tuning fork, gently reminding the body of a song it has always known but forgotten how to sing. Another dimension of integration lies in the stories themselves. To live as though one were Osiris being reassembled, or Isis gathering the fragments, is to enact in daily life the process of genetic restoration. Every act of forgiveness becomes a gathering of fragments. Every choice to heal rather than wound becomes the reassembly of a scattered code. Every moment of devotion to truth and beauty becomes an invocation of Isis's love, calling forth the rebirth of Horus within one's own being. The myths cease to be distant dramas and instead become mirrors for daily practice, shaping how we meet challenges, relationships, and even our inner shadows. Sound, too, plays an undeniable role. The Egyptians used chants, mantras, and the resonant acoustics of their temples to amplify the effect of symbols. Sound waves penetrate deeply into the body, influencing cells and fluids in ways modern research is only beginning to grasp. To pair the Egyptian symbol with sacred sound, whether through toning, chanting, or listening to resonant frequencies, is to awaken a synergy between geometry and vibration, both of which directly influence the field in which DNA unfolds its expression. Breath and movement are equally potent. Imagine tracing the symbol with one's body in gentle motion, or aligning breath with its curves in visualization. In doing so, the body becomes not only the observer of the symbol but its living embodiment. Such practices echo the Egyptian understanding that transformation was never purely mental or abstract, it had to be enacted in the flesh, grounded in the rhythms of body and breath. Perhaps the most transformative implication of this knowledge lies in its challenge to how we perceive ourselves. If DNA is reprogrammable, if the deepest patterns of our biology respond to intention, symbol, and consciousness, then the boundaries of human potential are far wider than we have been taught. Disease, trauma, limitation, all may be less rigid than they appear, more malleable to the influence of awakened awareness. The symbol whispers that we are not victims of fate carved into molecular stone but participants in an ongoing act of creation, capable of sculpting ourselves anew. This shift in perception has profound consequences for how we live in society. A humanity that recognizes its DNA as programmable through consciousness is a humanity that can no longer be easily controlled by fear, scarcity, or imposed narratives. It is a humanity that reclaims sovereignty not only of mind and spirit but of the very body itself. Perhaps this is why such knowledge was guarded, hidden, or suppressed, for to awaken it is to awaken freedom, and freedom threatens any structure built on control. Yet freedom is precisely what the Egyptians sought to reveal through their symbols: freedom from ignorance, freedom from fragmentation, freedom to live in harmony with the cosmic order. To integrate their wisdom is not to abandon modern life but to infuse it with a deeper awareness, to bring sacredness into ordinary routines. Eating becomes a ritual of nourishment for the code within. Speaking becomes a spell shaping the field of one's being. Resting becomes a descent into Ra's night journey, with the promise of dawn renewal. When lived in this way, the Egyptian symbol ceases to be distant history and becomes a compass, guiding the everyday into alignment with the eternal. Its power lies not only in esoteric chambers or temple walls but in the breath we take now, the choices we make today, the patterns we choose to seed in the present moment. For it is in these smallest acts that DNA listens, responds, and reshapes itself into the future we are daring enough to imagine. There is a silence that descends when we approach the end of a journey through ancient wisdom. It is not the silence of emptiness, but of presence, the kind that lingers in temple corridors long after the priest has finished the ritual, or the kind that swells within the heart when a truth has struck so deeply that words feel too small to contain it. To contemplate the Egyptian symbol said to hold the key to reprogramming DNA is to step into such silence. For in the end, what has been revealed is not only the legacy of a civilization, nor even a new layer of scientific possibility, but a mirror held up to ourselves, reflecting back the vast potential sleeping within our very being. The Egyptians lived with an awareness that the visible and invisible were inseparably woven. They knew that the body is a temple, the soul is a flame, and the cosmos is a living text inscribed with patterns awaiting our recognition. They carved their wisdom into stone and shaped it into myth so that even millennia later, fragments of their message might reach us: you are more than you believe yourself to be. You carry within you a blueprint not of limitation, but of divinity. And through the alchemy of symbol, sound, and intention, that blueprint can be rewritten, awakened, renewed. This is not an abstract claim. We stand today at a crossroads where ancient intuition and modern science converge. Epigenetics reveals that genes are malleable. Quantum biology suggests that consciousness may indeed play a role in shaping cellular processes. Mystical traditions worldwide echo the refrain that the human being is not fixed, but fluid, capable of transfiguration. The Egyptian symbol, then, is not a relic but a living archetype of this truth, that within each of us lies a ladder of light, a double helix humming with potential, waiting to be tuned by the sacred frequencies of awareness. But what will we do with such knowledge? For wisdom, no matter how profound, is powerless unless lived. To integrate the essence of this symbol is to treat every moment as an initiation. It is to see each thought as a signal to the cells, each emotion as a vibration inscribed upon the code of life. It is to choose coherence over chaos, harmony over dissonance, love over fear, knowing that these choices are not merely moral but biological, shaping the very fabric of who we are becoming. In this way, reprogramming DNA ceases to be the work of laboratories alone and becomes a path of conscious living. When we meditate on sacred forms, when we speak words of healing, when we enact forgiveness, when we align with joy, we are in truth inscribing new instructions into the field of our being. We are becoming the scribe of our own existence, taking up the pen once held by Thoth, rewriting not history but destiny. And yet, there is a humility required here. For the symbol does not offer control in the egoic sense. It does not make us gods of domination but initiates of harmony. To reprogram DNA is not to manipulate life but to surrender to its deeper order, to allow the divine geometry within us to resonate once more with the cosmic song. It is not conquest but alignment, not invention but remembrance. This is the transformational call, to remember who we are. To recognize that within our very blood lies the story of the stars, that within our bones lies the architecture of temples, that within our cells lies the power to awaken. The Egyptians knew it. They inscribed it in glyphs, embodied it in myths, guarded it in rituals. And now, the whisper reaches us again: you are the symbol, you are the key, you are the code that can be reprogrammed into freedom. The final invitation is simple, though not easy. Live as though your DNA listens to everything you do, because it does. Speak as though your words are incantations shaping your future, because they are. See symbols not as decorations but as mirrors of your inner architecture. Breathe as though each inhale carries starlight into your cells. Walk as though each step resounds through eternity. For when life is lived this way, every action becomes an act of reprogramming, every moment an initiation, every heartbeat a hymn of renewal. The Egyptian symbol is no longer confined to stone. It is alive in you. And if you choose to honor it, to live its truth, then you will not only transform your own being, you will become a beacon for humanity, reminding others of the vast, suppressed potential that lies within us all. For when one awakens, others remember. And when enough remember, the code of humanity itself will shift, freeing us forever from the shadows of forgetfulness and returning us to the radiant song of our origins. So the call is clear: become the initiate, become the scribe, become the living temple. Let the symbol breathe through you. Let your DNA awaken. And let the suppressed wisdom rise once more, not as memory, but as transformation embodied in the present, here and now.